I'm an alcoholic. My name's Tony. And today we're going to be talking about step 12 out of the book of Alcoholics Anonymous and 12 Steps and 12 Traditions. So if you've been following this step series, you know that we did the first 11 steps, and today we'll be completing this series. So just to recap, in step 1, we admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. In step 2, we came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. In step 3, we made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood Him. In step 4, we made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. In step 5, we admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. In step 6, we were entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. In step 7, we humbly asked God to remove our shortcomings. In step 8, we made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. In step 9, we made direct amends wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. In step 10, we continued to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. In step 11, we sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God. And now here we are at step 12, which the big book calls working with others, but the 12 and 12 says the 12th step right out, saying, having had a spiritual awakening as the result, not a result, the result of these steps, we try to carry this message to alcoholics and to practice these principles in all our affairs. Now, I stress the word "the" in the 12th step because it's the result, not a result. We're not looking for multiple results. We're looking for just one, right? A spiritual awakening. What we're looking for here is to find a higher power, to have a relationship with a higher power. And step 12 is the completion of the 12 steps, which helps us to enhance this relationship with our higher power by helping others. Now, it's often been said in AA meetings that the best way to get out of your own head and get out of your own problems is to help another suffering alcoholic. So that's why often in early recovery, you may not be on step 12, and your sponsor may take you on a 12-step call, which might be somewhere that he is going to help someone who's still suffering and has not been able to achieve sobriety. You will be there not as so much as an advisor, but as a witness for your own help, and to see what being a sponsor is about, to see what it's like to help another alcoholic, and to see what effect that has on you. Because as we say, you can't keep it unless you give it away. And if you keep giving it away and keep giving it away, it just enhances your self-esteem. It enhances how you feel about yourself. And it keeps you out of your head and thinking about all of your own problems. So step 12 is something that, in my experience, I was doing almost from the beginning. Now, I don't want you to think I did the steps out of order. I didn't. But my first sponsor, literally on the day that I became his sponsee, stuck his finger in my chest and said, "You will do service." Because he knew from his experience at the time, I think he was sober 28 years, that the best way for someone to get and stay sober is to help somebody else. So I walked into the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous having just left treatment, and I was sober 35 days, and he said to me, "You will do service." And I said, "How can I help anybody? I'm sober 35 days. And he showed me all the different ways that I could be of service and how I could help others. And it started with making coffee in the meeting. And it started with taking a commitment in a home group so that the group would know that every time that meeting was happening, I'd be there to make coffee. It also would mean things like cleaning up the room after our meeting. as I got through the steps and got further to the end, my service became on, you might say, a higher level. Like when I completed the steps, I became a sponsor myself. I started speaking at meetings and chairing meetings. That didn't make me a better quality AA member. That just made me someone who had completed the steps. And as I just read to you, having had a spiritual awakening as the result, not a result, the result. So it begs the question, am I going through the 12 steps to gain a spiritual awakening or to stay sober? Well, that's a good question. For me, I came to realize that the only way I could stay sober was having that spiritual awakening. I came into AA not believing in God. In fact, I thought we all were our own gods, and we all were masters of our domain, so to speak. And so that whatever decisions I made were going to be what guided my life. But very early on, I was still in treatment when somebody said to me, if you don't get the spiritual aspect of this, you're never going to get it. And some things started to happen as I started to follow direction. See, defiance is the number one characteristic of alcoholics, according to the 12 and 12. I was very defiant. It had to be drilled into my head, or I had to have enough pain to understand that I needed to get the spiritual part of this program. So I started doing those things that would enhance spirituality, such as prayer and meditation. I began by praying to a God that I didn't really believe was there, but I was told to just act as if. So I did that. And within a very short time, I started to get some hope, because my life started to change in very subtle ways. I started to see nature in a much more beautiful light. I started to hear the birds chirping and singing. I started to see more green in the grass, more blue in the sky, and I could not ascribe that to anything other than the fact that I was becoming somewhat spiritual. And I was praying and meditating every day, and I started to realize that the goal here was not sobriety. The result was sobriety. The goal here was to get to that spiritual awakening so that I could have sobriety. And so as time went on and my sobriety built in terms of time, and I got through more of the steps, I started to realize that my higher power is God, and my relationship with Him is the most important relationship in my life. Even more than my wife, more than my kids, because I really believe, having had this spiritual awakening, that if I don't put my higher power first ahead of everybody, then I'm going to lose those things anyway. So I keep that in mind. Those people in my life know that God comes number one. And, if you follow these steps at all, you know that I'm not someone who is overly religious. This is not about religion. It's about doing things like praying, meditating, giving God the credit for things when they go the way we'd like them to go. It's those kinds of things. It's having a constant conversation in our heads with God when we're not formally praying. It's really just accepting God into our life as much as possible. So step 12 is something that you begin, in my case, from the very beginning, but for many people, once they've established stable sobriety, let's call it 30 days, and you appear to be on track, and you're doing the steps. Perhaps you've done step 1 already. From then on, your sponsor may be taking you on these 12-step calls, and that will start building your sobriety, because you'll feel so good, because somewhere in those 12-step calls, even though your sponsor will be the point person, you will be able to become relatable to the person that he and you are talking to. And in some cases, the person you're talking to who's still suffering may look at you and see you as a good example because your sobriety is not that long, and say, wow, if you can do it, I can do it. And so you can become inspirational that way, and it really makes you feel good, and you keep wanting to help. And so now, as time goes on, 12-step work can become exhausting. In fact, I've sat in AA meetings when somebody comes into the meeting that's still under the influence and maybe causes a bit of a ruckus. And I remember on several occasions sitting with a sponsee in a meeting where my sponsee would kind of like shrug his shoulders and be a little upset that the meeting is being interrupted by this person. And I say to them, this isn't an interruption, this is an opportunity. You can help somebody. And I instruct them to go and talk to that person as soon as the meeting's over, or even if they're being causing a bit of a ruckus, to go over there and walk them outside and talk to them outside and calm them down and help them and show them that people care, because that's what we have to start doing. We have to start caring about other people, not just about ourselves. Because have we not been the most selfish people when we've been out there drinking? And isn't 12-step work about helping other people? Because by helping other people, we help ourselves. So I haven't read anything out of the 12 and 12 or the big book other than the step itself for this step, because I just told you my own personal experience. I think that's a little bit more important to see somebody else's experience rather than the book. You can read the book on your own time, but remember, helping others is what this is all about. And by helping others, we're getting towards that spiritual awakening that we're after. And the spiritual awakening, because after all, our sobriety is only as good as our spiritual place in life. So we have to maintain that spirituality. So thank you. I hope you've enjoyed the steps. The next video will be on something called toothbrush therapy, which are 5 things I do every day to stay sober. And I'll see you with that in about a week. Thank you. Bye.